will come to a percentage like around 30%. Like 70% of the new voters, usually they vote a new candidate. But on figures, there is something I want us to focus on. Dr. Kizza Besigye got 3 million votes in 2016. In 2011, he got around 2.8 million votes. There was just an addition of 200,000, yet there were new voters who were almost 2.5. In 2021, Honorable Kyagulanyi got 3 million, not any different from Dr. Besigye. And you have 18 million registered voters, by the way. Right now we have 18 registered voters. So where are the 15 million people? President Museveni is usually given a figure which has kept on moving between 7. This time they are going to give him around 10 million. I don't know.
Okay, Christine?
I think for me it's sad first to know that the media is failing to cover someone because they don't have the money to go and do campaigns. That alone speaks a lot. And we're having this discussion of why the voter turnout keeps going low. First of all, I think it's already been established that the elite do not vote at all. If you're to ask all of us in this room, you'll find that very few people have voted. I myself inclusive, I haven't voted. But then you see, we are the people who see things happen, and we are the people who can hold leaders to account. We are the people who can analyze. You're journalists, you can be able to read reports and question and guide people to do the right things, but you're not voting to begin with. The people who are voting are the ones who don't really have any information. They don't know how or what to say to the people. And another thing I thought that I should bring out is that I feel there is a very big correlation between level of income and the ability to vote. When there were the NRM primaries, I was back home in Fort Portal. And in the morning, I just asked people at home, aren't you going to vote? And some were saying, they didn't give us transport. Meanwhile, the transport they are asking for is like 3,000. You see why I'm saying the level of income. Imagine if everyone could manage to buy themselves food, or manage to transport them to wherever they want, or manage to just give themselves the basic needs. There is no one who is going to come and bribe you for a vote because you can do everything yourself. So I think the discussion, in my view, should be around economic empowerment. I feel like that's a very big milestone to not solving entirely, but addressing some of those issues. If we are economically empowered, no person is going to lie to me about providing whatever, because I know I can get it myself. But the reason as to why we have very many people, and I think Afrobarometer produced a research, very many people in the rural areas vote, is because they are influenced by money. And if maybe we can address that somehow with civic education, I think we can get far as a nation.
Thank you very much, Christine. Though I posed a question about economic empowerment, correlation between poverty and people going out to vote in big numbers. 1996, we have 72.9. Yeah? People turning up to vote. And in 2011, we have 59. So should we say they were a bit empowered in 96 and somehow not empowered in 2011? So that's the other thing. Yes?
Okay, thank you so much. Still about the voter turnout, I think according to me, now like we journalists, you find yourself that on the day of voting, you're allocated somewhere. Maybe the MP is going to vote from there and you have to cover that person or the president like that. So you find yourself that you're not going to vote because you're not registered in that area. So I think think that many people do not vote because they are not in those areas where they registered to vote from. And another thing is the chaos that comes around with voting. Let me say in the morning, you can hear that the ballot papers are not yet here, the long queues. So if the person comes today to vote and all that happens, the kavuyo and everything, that person will decide not to vote the next time. Kwaba yalabe byamtukako the other time, the sunshine, the long queues, the ballot papers, ballot box, like things happen. So these people get tired and they decide not to come back to vote again.
Caucus, your neighbor, you have two neighbors. The first one here, your name, sir? Yeah, Namgera. Then Aine.
Good afternoon. This is Namgera Mdasil from Journalism and Communication. So about the turn up of voting, I can base it on two factors. One, bias, because we have a belief that we have some candidates we know that they are going to pass and others who are not going to pass. So then I was talked about economic empowerment. So if I'm supporting a candidate and I know that this candidate will not win, I can't get my transport to move from here to Zimbabwe to vote. Because I know even if I go there, I'm going to waste my money, even if the candidate gets more votes. The other one, others may say
is this your opinion as Namgera, or
Yes.
or as a journalist you engaged voters and that's what they told you?
it's my opinion, because we have been, even people have started predicting that this will be the first candidate. So we have that belief that even if before voting, at least 90% you know who is going to win. Then from that, for those who are supporting those who are going to win according to them, even if I don't vote, my candidate will pass. So the problem now, the other one is about movements, that some of us, we are here in Kampala, but we are registered in our districts where we came from. So getting transport to go back in the village to vote and then you come back, it's somehow expensive. If you refer to the other one, we say that in 1996, the turn-up of voting was high. Those people, by that time, they used to stay like in near their polling stations. But now, no, I know. What I'm saying now, the movements or migrations now are so high compared to 1996.
Thank you.
Yes.
Aine?
Thank you so much, Mr. Keija. My name is Gerald Aine, and I'm a student of journalism and communication. So I want to shed more light to Christine's idea of economic empowerment. I am a registered voter in Bunyangabu district and Bunyangabu, particularly in between Kasese and Fort Poto. So I vote from Kasenyi polling station. So you realize when it is time for voting, people don't know the person they are supposed to vote up to the day, the voting day in the morning. But the person that will transport them to the polling station is one who takes the vote. So, on an individual level, I should have voted twice. But for the first time, because I don't think I already had the views I hold about voting at the moment. But for the first time, I voted the candidate, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. That is to differ from what Mr. Kakaire says, that he expects that the biggest population or the percentage of the voters that are young or the Gen Zs maybe will vote Kasivante or some other. But there is a lot that surrounds this voting process, especially now in the villages. That is why if Mudashiru says, I don't have the money to take me to vote, why vote? So, yeah, things have changed.
Thank you very much. Pass the microphone across the table.
Thank you. It's an opinion. Thank you, Mr. Kajia. My name is Mjukira Xavier. I work for Inaman Radio. My question is, how do you measure that percentage according to what electoral position? Presidential elections and parliamentary elections only, or all other?
Presidential.
Only that one. Then the other thing is that maybe voters, they are tired of voting. These days, voters need the money. They only know what we call money to come for voting. Because me, myself, as I'm speaking right now, I'm a candidate. I'm a councillor in my electoral area, Gomba district councillor. But what my people always tell me is that please prepare for money to transport people to go and vote you. So that one is also a big challenge.
Okay, gentlemen and ladies, I am.
NRM.
I want us.
One last on that. Okay, Mr.
gentlemen.
Work, on the last one, on the percentages. Okay, now, kanjogere mu Luganda. Emiwendo gino egy'abalonzi abajja okulonda mu 1996 abantu baali bakyalina ennyonta y'okulonda. Ekisookera ddala Uganda tewaaliyo kulonda eri emabega. Kaakati mu 1996 baali balina ennyonta excitement ey'okulonda ne bajja balonda. Ekirala namba z'abalonzi zaali zikyali ntono. Ne buli namba bwe zeeyongera abalonzi abeegattako bonna tebajja kulonda. Bagenda beetoolako mpola 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 newankubadde nga mu registers ez'akakiiko k'ebyokulonda zo zirinnya, naye zino ez'abajja zirinnya, ez'abakoowu abatakyayagala kumanya kubanga bagamba nti result ziri predetermined, nga omukulu wa DF bwe yagamba nti tasobola kwetaba mu kintu kyalabira ddala nga wiina waali. Kakati n'abantu abamu eyo y'endowooza gye balina. Bagamba nti lwaki ye ŋŋenda okulonda nga nkimanyi ti candidate Yoweri Museveni ajja kuwangula. Lwanga Derek.
Give the phone. In 1 minute. In 1 minute.
Okay,
1 minute.
thank you very much. I am Ronnie Blegeya. I report for Impact Radio. I'm going to differ from the rest of the guys. The media also contributes to that, the low voter turnout. Because we influence the public opinion, sometimes we focus on the big names. What report is what usually the public consumes. So sometimes when the media focuses on the big names, for example, Kyagulanyi Museveni, the rest of the people who watch our news, all those who listen to our news, will actually go with that. And sometimes when they say that Nanda Mafabi or Frank, they do not have people, they will usually go with the other ones who have a lot of people. So we need to do a lot as the media to see that we balance our stories and report on whichever candidate is in the field. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have one last question to put to you. I don't expect you to give an answer now, but I'll say this. What questions emerge from this discussion for us as journalists that we need to go back and answer through our reporting? Think about that, the questions that emerge, and how we are going to answer them through our reporting. How are we going to interrogate these candidates, interrogate their manifestos, to try and connect their manifestos or their policy positions to the issues affecting an ordinary person in this country. Have we reached out to the ordinary people, asked them what they think about these candidates? Do they plan to vote? Who do they plan to vote and why? Have we we need to think about some of these questions and go back and help the voters make the choices that help them, or the choices that are informed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaija, for that presentation. The man deserves another hand clap, good people. Thank you. And now we prepare for our last session. The session is talking about money and political marketing. So the adverts that we get from the candidates, from the political parties, how do we deal with those? And we will be taken through that session by Dr. Gerald Walulia, who is setting up. Now, the reason we've not taken additional questions is because it has been an interactive session, really. We've been sharing and asking and getting the answers. So I believe that most of the concerns have been addressed. Yes, that would be a very good idea. An energizer for us? Okay. As we set up, we need to stretch a little bit. So we are going to have some quick energizer from Christine.
Good evening to you all. I am going to struggle to excite you after talking about very exciting things, but I'm not even sure whether the things I'm going to talk about are relevant to you, because they involve money, and I'm told that journalists and money don't mix. But nevertheless, I will try to communicate what I'm supposed to communicate. I welcome all of you. I see my senior colleague. Which media house do you work for? Hope TV. Oh, I think I didn't know that
this TV. Now I know there is Hope TV. So we are talking about political marketing and advertising in election coverage. Who has seen an election advert in this current season? Yes? Oh, I should say seen or heard. Mm. Okay. So basically, we are going to be discussing some of the principles that might bind us when we are dealing with adverts within this election season. We know that many candidates will come to our media houses trying to solicit for, trying to get access to speak to our listeners, our readers, and our viewers. So as we do that, we need to be aware of the power of advertising and how we can manage this power to make sure that it doesn't distort the process. So we start by asking ourselves, what is election advertising or marketing? Because we already know what advertising is, but we are looking at it in the context of elections. And we are saying that an advertisement or advertisement is one of the important avenues through which candidates communicate with their voters. And we also note that an election advertisement or advertisements are an important avenue that may reasonably be regarded as encouraging or persuading voters to vote or not to vote for a given candidate. So, political advertising is normally using adverts and promotional materials to influence public opinion or sway voter behavior. So people who are seeking political offices issue or commission adverts so that they can influence voters to support their preferred candidates. And election advertisement is normally intended to ensure that a given candidate or political group gets support from the targeted population. Maybe before we go on, we need to ask, is it good for politicians to make adverts? We know that under normal circumstances, there are certain types of businesses, for instance, which are not allowed to advertise. Council Sulaiman, I think there are rules to the effect that he can't go to CBS and say, if you need legal services, please come to Kakaire and Company Advocates. So there are certain types of businesses and practices that we can't advertise. So might it be a good thing that we should not also advertise elections. He has shared some adverts he has had today. But what are some of the adverts you remember in some of the recent campaigns? Any adverts, especially for presidential candidates? Any that you remember? One of the main challenges that media in Uganda faces is that, I think this was told to me in 2016 by one editor in Monitor, in New Vision, that during elections as a media house, we spend so much money, yet politicians don't invest a lot of money in media in form of advertisement that should have compensated for the money we use to cover elections. So because of our economic situations, most politicians do not run traditional adverts in the media. It is probably a few candidates, particularly from the ruling party, that tend to run adverts, especially on TV and radio. And this sometimes limits the opportunities that the media might have gotten from advertisement. So, advertising or marketing in elections is a strategic manipulation of public perceptions, and these adverts are crafted to exploit emotions and fears. As we can see, I tried to get a few videos of adverts, but I wasn't successful, but I will remind you about a few of them. So adverts wield enormous power in shaping election in terms of who will be supported and who will not be supported. And the impact of political advertisement sometimes can extend beyond the election season to further shape conversations even in the post-election period. Therefore, the ethical implications of political adverts are very profound, raising questions of transparency, truthfulness, fairness, and fairness of the electoral process. So, this is why we need to be extremely careful when dealing with adverts. Now, when we define advertisement, some of you might not have found your media houses running any adverts for any given candidate. But there are practices within our media houses which qualify to be a form of advertisement. For example, your Radio Simba, Femwe Mwefe, and you are running a talk show every evening called your Lutindo, but this talk show is a paid-for program. You provide it as a form of information, but it's also an advertorial in a way that people who have paid are the ones who access this program. So we regard this as a form of advertisement. So therefore, don't say that because we don't have an advert like the one that ran in 2000, olina kye weekoledde, olina abaana, londa Museveni oleme kwejjusa. So this was an advert which was made for President Museveni in 2001 for some of us who are old enough to have lived during that time. So these, even if an advert doesn't fall within that typical type of adverts where a presenter says we are going in a commercial break and then runs a series of adverts, even those messages that are carried within sponsored programs should be equated to adverts. So, I think we have previously seen, especially this one, we have seen an advert of NRM where they were kind of constructing a narrative that vote wisely so that we don't go back in the old turmoil. I told you that adverts play on people's emotions and fear. So I think this was an example of an advert that is playing on people's fears to try and capture the attention of people. The other one I think I saw in 2016, there was an advert in which was voiced by Senkubuge Siasa, showing arcades in town. Oh, Mabirizi Plaza, Sentamu Arcade. You see, bino ebintu mbadde ndowooza bya bantu mwesige. Mwana wattu tukoze ebintu banga lyobadde mu London. You know, he was trying to deconstruct a narrative that maybe the property owners in town are from Western Uganda. So he was mentioning these names, Mutasa Kafero, So he was mentioning some of these buildings in town which have Chiganda names to show. So the storyline was that he was speaking to a friend who had been away in London for so many years, and he came back after some time, and Uganda had developed so much. So he was trying to tell him that Uganda has been able to develop as a result of efforts of hardworking Ugandans, but also provided with a good environment by the sitting government. So that was that advert. Mainly because of financial constraints, opposition candidates, apart from buying radio programs up country, they don't tend so much to sponsor adverts on TVs and radios or even newspapers. But also in the context within which we work, it might also be regarded as risky running an advert of candidate A or B. So I think we also understand that sometimes media houses have fears, whether founded or unfounded, that they may sometimes turn down opportunities to advertise for certain candidates. So, because of the power of advertisement, in some countries, for example in the UK, the use of broadcast media to do election advertisement is highly restricted for fear that wealthy groups or politicians might gain control of airtime and make fair play impossible, thereby distorting the political debate. That if you open it up and you allow whoever has money to come and advertise, it might end up being a show of the rich politicians or political parties at the expense of those that might have had good ideas but lack access to media. But in other countries, I think this has also been the case in Uganda. It is open. Whoever has money can always buy space or airtime and run their adverts. I think sometimes adverts are restricted in regard to timing. In Uganda, I think we have a no campaign day, like a day or 2 days before the actual voting. During this period, nobody should run a campaign or even advertise their candidature. But I have noted over and over again that this is one of the most violated rules. So, how do we deal with political adverts? One of the important rules is that there should be sponsor disclosure. All political ads must disclose who paid for them, and this is very important in the sense that we know why an advert appears the way it is because someone has paid for it. Recently, there is a new trend of advertisement which is highly disguised as editorial content, the one that you like to call native advertising. Those especially who are into written media, that I have a few examples, especially when it comes to these online publications. They can write a story, for instance, which goes like, Chagulanyi promises to sweep Kampala. They write overly positive stories about a candidate, or even criticize an opponent without giving the opponent a right to respond to the claims that have been made about their candidature. So, beyond disclosing the sponsors of an advert, it is important to develop, publish, and file a rate card that clearly indicates the cost of an advert or sponsored programming and the cost of various shows. So, most of you are not marketing people, but you are familiar with what we call rate cards. A rate card is a piece of information which shows how much money is supposed to be paid for each type of time or space. So, it is important that you publish and file this rate card, for example, with the regulator, so that there is a tendency that some media houses behave like doctors in clinics. They do what they call price discrimination. Bobby bw'aba yazze omugamba kabeeyi kake, mabirizi naye bw'alabika mugamba kooligwe awo ne bwompa abiri nja kakuba. So they do price discrimination. So the importance of having a rate card is that it shows a standard rate at which everyone is charged. And this is all intended to show fairness and avoiding bias in whatever you are trying to sell. So, for accountability reasons, here we say it might help to file a copy of the rate card for the sponsored programming with regulators such as UCC to ensure transparency, that in case someone raises a complaint, you have evidence around that you have been fair to the said candidate, and so on. If you are requested by a political actor, such as a candidate, make available a copy of the rate card for the sponsored programming or advertising and the talk shows to all political parties, candidates, or electoral commission. And any other interested party. So in other words, don't hold this information, but make it available for everyone to access it. Ensure that this card is filed, for instance, with the regulators so that you can use it as a form of evidence in case anyone raises complaints against you. We have already stated, and we are stating it again, that this is all done to ensure that there is equality or equal opportunity and equal treatment of all political parties and candidates during or in the use of advertisement. So media houses need to desist from practices of that can be regarded as discriminatory of any political party or candidate, or subject any political party or candidate to any prejudice in broadcasting or airing their adverts. We had an example in 2016 where Dr. Kizza Besigye bought airtime with UBC and paid, I think, a certain sum of, it was in the region of around 18 million. I'm not very sure of the exact figure, but he paid some good money for UBC to run his adverts. UBC took the money but didn't run the adverts. So he consequently took them to court, and the court ordered that they pay him a fine of 80 million shillings. But this was after a very long time. The case took almost 6 years to be decided. So these are cases or examples where a media house might fail to be fair to all candidates. That whereas other candidates were able to advertise with them, when one candidate approached them, they accepted, took his money, but never ran his adverts. So, media houses should ensure that there are equal opportunities for all political parties, organizations, and candidates, and that media houses should give parties, organizations, and candidates, when they request an opportunity, to run their advert or adverts, as long as they pay the stipulated rates. When it comes to state media, or what we would normally call public media, the rules are even more explicit and clear. Even though we have raised the case of Dr. Kizza Besigye versus UBC, there are instances where we know that the public media or state-controlled media have denied opportunity to other candidates who are not the incumbent. So state media houses should schedule a timetable for all candidates, not only to advertise, but also to campaign on their platforms in accordance with the Presidential Elections Act 2005 and the Parliamentary Elections Act. You might remember that in 2016, in the Amama Mbabazi presidential petition, this was one of the issues which came out, that UBC had failed to give equal access to all candidates who were in the race. And I remember that Mama Mbabazi had used a media monitoring report done by the Africa Center for Media Excellency to prove that President Yoweri Museveni had received the lion's share of coverage on the national broadcaster. So, in accordance with UCC guidelines, state-owned media should submit the agreed schedule of of the time they are planning to allocate to different candidates, file it with the Electoral Commission and UCC for monitoring. Private media houses, however, should also ensure that all advertising space and airtime is not bought out by one political party. I don't know whether you are familiar with this, but when you go out in the upcountry areas and you are probably an opposition candidate, remember that many radio stations are owned by politicians, most especially the ones belonging to the ruling party. Whenever you go to buy airtime, they will tell you that space is sold out. There is no chance. This program has been bought for the next 1 month. Sometimes it might be true, but I think it might be also of sending you away so that you don't cause them problems. I don't know whether any of you have had an opportunity where a candidate has come to you and you have turned them away, that I'm sorry you can't speak to our media. Have you seen it? Which one? The opponent station. Yes?
In 2021, Ngabu FM was the only radio station in Bunyangabu district. I'm speaking about this simply because then I was home. It was COVID time. So Ngabu FM had been, I think the owner was the incumbent, the current MP of Bunyangabu County, that is one that had just pushed out, I think it is the clerk at the moment, Adolf Mwesige. So out of the NRM ticket, simply because he introduced a radio station and he had enough space to always campaign at will. So when he got the flag, there came, at the moment, one who holds the NRM flag is a one Victor Kalenzi. So one afternoon, you realize that he used this radio station because there were two against one another. Victor Kalenzi as an independent candidate. So when Victor Kalenzi after Victor Kalenzi's appearance on air, so the program was always, I think the questions were always designed against him. So so that he could give a response that was against the owner of the radio station, and he did not appear there again. So he opted for some other stations in Fort Portal, like Life FM, Boda Boda, Hits FM, and that means the biggest percentage of the voters that used to vote for him in Bunyangabu were always accessing Ngabu FM, that that he did not access anymore.
So that denied him opportunity.
Yes.
Because some of his voters could not hear him. Adverts are very important because besides having an inherent bias, they contain some useful information nevertheless. For instance, if a candidate uses an advert to articulate his manifesto, it can tell you what this candidate stands for, even when he's using an advert. So it might be a good thing that when you hear an advert of candidate A, you can also have an opportunity to hear from candidate B. And I think this is where we need to be careful in terms of how we regulate adverts in our media stations. Okay? Yes? Event. I think for me, the way I interpret that is that it is the candidate has voluntarily boycotted a given media house. So the rules of fairness for him cease to apply. So even if I think they are even very generous that sometimes they can say, oh, we have this picture or photo from the camp of President Museveni, and that's all we have. Even that is generous. I think omuntu bw'aba azize ekintu tokimukaka. So I think here they have no choice, but the candidate has made a choice not to use the services of a given media platform. So that's why we say if a candidate has requested to advertise with you, but here a candidate has boycotted you, so you can't just pursue a candidate. You must wait for a candidate to come to you. So I think you can't blame them if they don't give fair coverage to that candidate because they have no access. And here we are talking about a candidate who has security. You can't just bump into his rallies. And if you are caught, you might be in very big trouble. So again, candidates to whom broadcast time is sold are entitled to the lowest unit charge of the station for that class and amount of time and period they wish to purchase for. So I think the whole principle is that give every candidate what you can give another candidate, or even give politicians the same rates you give business people who are advertising Movit, who are doing these other types of advertisement. So a candidate of any public office buying time outside an election period should also be offered what is ordinarily offered for commercial advertisers in terms of rates and so on. So I think the idea behind this is that they should not look at political candidates as being special or as having so much money, so they use this as an opportunity to kind of extort money out of them. Because there is an inherent public good in the candidate's information. And a candidate for any public office who buys airtime through an advertising agency should also pay charges that the agents may levy as a result of their services. So that's why in the beginning I told you that some of the information might not apply to you. Marketing people might know this sometimes even better than you as a journalist. Media houses should desist from taking promotional incentives such as branded caps if they would reasonably imply that a station has endorsed candidate A or candidate B. Take an example. If you have, what talk show do we have on BBS? The one of Busulwa is called what? Maso Kugwanga. We have a program called Maso Kugwanga, and the candidates, you are hosting different people, but the panelists sitting on Amaso Kugwanga, chai mumubawera mubikopo ebiriko ekifaananyi kya Museveni oba obucupa bw'amazzi awo awali akapapula kuliko kafaananyi kaani ka Bobi Wine. Kati ekyo omuntu abalaba akitwala nti station eno ewagira candidate gundi oba gundi. So you might not take such promotional materials because they might convey a different message contrary to what you want to display. Sometimes this can also scare away potential political opponents of this candidate because they will think that you are biased. A station may not treat candidates seeking credit any different from the way it treats commercial advertisers. Oli bw'aba ayagala mumukubira obulango ku bbanja, mutwale ng'ow'ebbanja omulala yenna. I don't know what, because for candidates, this might require more scrutiny. Who are you lending? Because candidates can go out of an election, nga baabise, they no longer have money, so they are not like an established company like Mukwano or Coca-Cola, where you know that even next year I can go to them. Candidates are only there for a season, but the idea is that if it has been your policy to give airtime on credit, you can as well give a credit to a political candidate so that they can run their advert. Stations do not have to allow candidates for political offices to buy advertising time during news because this might be interpreted to be some form of news or part of the news. The advert might be seen as also a news. You see like this advert which begins a newscast. I think sometimes there is a jingle running for 60 seconds on a TV station. Kati muzeeyi ayinza okujja n'akagula ako. Kati that is a very prime advert, and it can sometimes mislead. But I said earlier that beyond what we know as advertisement, ennaku zino amawulire mugataddemu nnyo ssente nti osobola okukuba story naye ng'eringa kirango. I don't know whether you are familiar. Ate kati oba mmwe mulowooza ffe abalaba amawulire tuli basiru? Edda there was a time when Bukedde TV used to run stories about Middle East, that consulting thing which used to take people Middle East, maybe even whatever. but I watched the one of Middle East. The way the whole thing was done was like an advert, but they are running it as a news story. So if you do this, especially for an election advert, it will be very unfortunate for people who are watching your station. Because for someone who has not studied communication the way I have, they may think this is the truth about this candidate, whereas this might be distorted information. So for most of the rules that might apply for presidential and parliamentary elections, for local council elections, there are no rules in regard to restrictions and quotas that you can give to candidates. What is, however, important is that the principle of fairness to all candidates should be upheld. The most difficult thing now is that the context within which our media houses are founded makes it sometimes difficult to implement some of these principles. You are the owner of the station, akukubidde akasimu akugambye nti serunjojo oyo mujje ku mpewo nze simwagala ku radio yange. Sometimes they can even speak like that. Take him off air, even in the middle of a program. So, for you as a little Joseph who has just finished your degree in journalism and communication, you might have little power to confront such an order from not just your manager, but the owner of the station. So I think that's where the biggest challenge might lie. As we probably wind up, we have already spoken about sponsor identification, that it is important to identify who has paid for this advert. The way you see in other adverts, obubaka buno obubatuusibwako akakiiko k'ebyokulonda. That is a very important statement because it tells us who has paid. Beyond sponsor identification, media houses need to make available for public inspection a complete record of request for purchase of broadcast time. And this record shall contain information such as the rate that you are charging them, whether the request has been granted or denied, and the date and time on which the communication has been received, the class of time that is purchased. You normally have prime time or the way airtime is classified, the name of the candidate to which the communication refers and the office he's seeking to fill. So these are very important details that you need to keep for future reference and to defend yourself in case anything comes up. Lastly, some of the other considerations. As professionals in the communication sector, especially in journalism, it is also important that you scrutinize election adverts so that you can guide the people who craft them on what might be acceptable content and what content might not be acceptable. So, election adverts need not to focus exclusively on competitors. Ekiranga ekivumirira gw'ovuganya naye. Gundi mubbi, gundi yali kino, gundi So that kind of practice is not, that would not qualify to be a professional advert. The candidate instead in his advert should highlight his or her strengths rather than critiquing competitors. You can still embed a message that criticizes your opponent without singling them out in the advert. Adverts that overly focus on rivals in political advertising are perceived as misleading and may erode trust among voters and the media house running such adverts. So, adverts which overly criticize an opponent can discredit your media platform. So you need to guide the people who have come to advertise with you, and you tell them that ekirango kino kirimu okuvuma kungi, ovuma bovuganya nabo, olulimi wano tulukakanyemu, kino tukijjemu. So you can help them to develop a more professional message. But also encourage them to stick to facts by ensuring that all contents in adverts are factual and unbiased. Because misleading or fake news adverts have no place in political advertising. Oli bw'aleeta ekirango nga kijjuddemu obulimba, tekyandibadde kirango kirungi kyakukola ki kyakuteeka ku mpewo. But however, we also know that the context under which we work sometimes makes it impossible to turn away adverts simply because maybe they contain messages that we don't agree with or we think are not professional. However, for the long-term sustainability of our media platforms, it is important to maintain these ethical principles so that we can live to see the next election and the next government. There are media houses where if government changed, they would cease to exist. Nga gwe bamanyi ekikopo wali okikubira gavumenti eyo, ne bwe wabaawo akasambattuko leediyo gye basooka okwokya. So, a professional media platform would want to avoid being in that kind of situation. Do your work in such a way that you can still defend it many years and many decades to come, so that you don't live to regret that had you behaved professionally, you would still maintain your business. I will give just 2-3 opportunities for people who have any experiences related to media and advertising during elections. If you have any experience beyond what we have already shared, I'll give you an opportunity. And if you have any question, this is also the time for you to ask. Yes, Wilson.
Thank you, Gerard, for the presentation. I just wanted to give some information on gifts, receiving gifts. On one hand, it's dangerous for you, for instance, to get a T-shirt from a political party in the party colors, and then you rock up tomorrow at office wearing the T-shirt or the cape or whatever. One, you mark yourself in a way. People now begin to identify you, to associate you with that political party or grouping. So whatever you do, somehow you lose the trust of your listeners, of your readers, of viewers. They seem to think you belong to that political party. However objective you try to be, or balanced you try to be in your story, they always think that person belongs to that party or political association. That's one. But number two, my own experience the media house I've worked for a long time, we have a policy of disclosure. If you've received something in the field, you're supposed to come back to the newsroom and declare it to the editor and hand it over to the editor. Now, if it's
nga n'akasente mwokatwalidde.
I'm coming to that. You have to come and declare to the editor and hand over. Now, the editor has the right to distribute that gift to whoever he or she chooses, not necessarily you. So, for instance, if they've given you, let's say, capes, t-shirts from an NGO, whatever, come declare to the editor. The editor can choose to say, I'm giving this to JB, not necessarily to Kaija who brought it. So that's the policy. It's, of course, house policy. Now, for the issue of money, the media house I've worked for has a zero tolerance. We insist that our journalists shouldn't receive money from sources. Now, it's one thing having the policy in place and implementing it, but it's also another getting to know the person has actually received the money or not. Do they receive the money? I want to say, I don't know. But do we get to know that they receive the money? No. When we get to know, some people have lost their jobs because of that. So there is that thing that you may not know that the person has received the money. But the moment we get to know that the person has received money from sources, that's the end of our association with that person.
Okay. Bob?
I just, my submission relates a lot with what Akiki has shared with us. There are these scenarios when you go to the field, you cover a story, and you don't ask for anything, but either the person you've interviewed or the whole organization, they decide to give you something. And when you reach the newsroom, the editor may be like, this story, yes, it's a good story, but today we may not run it. And when those people who have given you something tune in and they don't see the story, they threaten. They'll be like, now we are going to tell them that we gave you money to run it and you didn't. It has happened to like someone I know, and it had to cause all of us issues in the newsroom. They were like, so you guys, you've been receiving money, but you've not been disclosing. Because at least if there are people here who cover different stories, they know that happens. You go somewhere to cover an event, you do it, but then they decide willingly to give you either a 20K or 30 or any amount. But when you go back, depending on the stories you have that day, the editor may tell you that today, the stories we have that may not run, but for them they may think like obakubye kumutwe oziridde. So now I don't know, maybe back then in his time it used to be like proper, you have to disclose, but right now I doubt if people do that, because once you go, even if you're a cabinet reporter, you only go to Uganda Media Center. Even when they give, some people don't say, they just keep quiet. So I don't know if...
I think I don't want to go into the debate of brown envelopes because it's a very long one. I myself have covered presidential elections, and I have an idea of what happened there then. I am sure things have since changed a little bit, but I know that most of the fairly well-facilitated candidates, they have facilitation packages for journalists. And if you are in the newsroom, you can see the scramble. Buli omu ayagala bamusindike wa Museveni oba wa FDC. They will know which candidate gives what. So I want us to restrict our conversation to advertising. And in terms of branded materials, I think Wilson has properly articulated that. But even beyond branded materials, there are certain signs which might send a wrong message about your media house. For instance, oli bw'atuuka ku kizimbe ekiriko woofiisi zammwe nga kijjudde bipande bya candidate A, there is an impression they go away with. Why posters of this candidate here? So you either put posters of all, allow putting of posters of all candidates, or remove all the posters so that you are not termed to be for this candidate or the other candidate. Whenever you identify yourself with a specific candidate, you put your name and your life at risk because you don't know what will happen. Sometimes the image that a media organization has portrayed has put the life of their reporters and their workers at risk simply because of the public perception a certain action might have communicated. In the recent election, for instance, NBS was forced to remove all branded cars from the campaign trail because ordinary people supporting a special opposition had started to target their transport system and their workers because simply they perceived their coverage to be maybe pro-NRM. So they said, okay, naffe tujja kubakolako. So don't put your life at risk and don't put your business or the business of your boss at risk by seemingly appearing partisan.
Dr. Jared, I have a question myself. I want you to talk about, I've watched, for instance, some political talk shows, like the show Zambale Blasio Mukasa used to host on NBS. Is it Barometer?
Yes.
Yes, Kasa Meme. So you could clearly see that Zambale is on some side, is supporting some side. So is that also advertising? How is that? How do we talk about that in relation to media and objectivity?
That also would belong to a different kind of talk. So in the interest of time, I would, as journalists, we also have our personal biases. There are people who are good at disguising their biases, but there are also others where even if they are just asking a question, you can see that this question comes from one side and not the other. Yes? Where is the gentleman who had a nice voice? He hasn't asked in my...
Well, thank you, Doctor. I have two submissions to make. One in relation to advertisement. We've always edited our, let's say, a contestant has brought in his advert. But before we play on air, we listen to the package in the advert. I remember in 2021, there was one who was predominantly speaking about the opponent. And the words in the advert were so abusive, and we had to advise him. We said, no, business-wise, we might lose, but we want the content that the listeners will consume to be the content that will either let you pass or you will not go through. So we had to edit the bad part of the advert. And of course, he accepted. We played that on air. Then two, most media houses have at least an hour for the RDCs in the districts. I give an example. In the radio I work for, we always give an hour each and every single week to the office of the RDC. They say it is government airtime. from the UCC. I thought we would have someone from the UCC, but if it reaches election time like this, the RDC comes with someone from the NRM.
Secretariat.
Yes. Then they say this is government airtime and it is free of charge. But in the long run, the RDC will be advertising for this particular person. So I don't know how to go about that. Thank you.
I think some of these issues have no direct answer. You can see that the RDC was abusing the right that you had given government space to air government-related information, and so he tried to hook in NRM adverts within the program, and sometimes it is a little bit difficult to resist, but you can see that he has crossed the line.
Okay, Dr. Gerard. I'm going to use Luganda.
Will people understand you?
Yeah, Luganda lwangu. Will you understand Luganda? Okay, now let me use English. Okay, now, when you look at the advertising in the campaigns, now, I will give the example of a government media house and a private media house. For a private one, those with money will eat all the airtime. There is somewhere we say that you should allow all the others to have the airtime, to have a balanced stuff on there. But you cannot have that because they don't have money. We will end up having a 2 or 1 candidate buying all the airtime, and all what you will do is to advertise those. Now, when we go to the public, I will use the example of UBC. Now, UBC is supposed to give all the other candidates airtime, right? Because it is a public broadcaster. But look at the way they conduct Yoweri Museveni, because he still sits in as the head of state, and you know their editorial policy. They're supposed to handle him first, right? So that is their policy, meaning that even if you coerce them, do something that favors all, that can't happen there. Even if you buy the time there, you can never have the same time with the candidate Yoweri. It becomes difficult for them. So I don't know what we're supposed to do in this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lastly, yes? Okay.
Thank you. Now that I'm the last doctor, you asked for those.
This one will be the last.
Okay. Those with experience, but I also just wanted to draw from the experience that I got from the training you gave, though I could practically have a 0 experience. You talked about the need for, you talked of how there is an independent good in the information that these candidates carry. So, but still the problem goes to the media ownership. Much as individual journalists can struggle to maintain fairness and equality between the candidates, but still, when we talk about who owns the media, the umbrella under which individual journalists work, they may hold the principles of accountability, they may carry all the principles of journalism, but still, the ownership matters a lot. It still influences the kind of stories that have to air, which candidate has to appear on a certain media house or who doesn't have to appear. Because when I entered here, the very first fears I had, if I must report myself for having come late, the fear from the previous presentation was that candidates who do not have the money cannot even be covered. We say this is the public good, the information that they hold, but the candidates without money at times cannot be covered. Journalists expect to cover people who will give them transport to take them back at home. Or some candidates have sponsored or have paid a certain amount of money to the media houses, and they expect journalists to follow them from those media houses wherever they are going. So if you are one who has no money, this still sounds hypocritical.
Okay, I think the question of ownership is a very serious question to which we might not have very quick answers. In the last election, there is one of the top radio stations around here in Kampala. There was someone contesting as a mayor of one of the divisions that the owners and managers of that popular radio station didn't want to go through. So immediately they heard that so and so is also vying for that position. They called the opponent and they told him, yangu ya mangu ano obulango bwoleeta obulango 500 tugenda bukukubira ku bwereere. So you see that owners invest a lot of resources in some of these political groups, and sometimes fairness can be difficult to achieve in the face of decided owners who want to favor one side against the other. So, and I think unless the regulatory mechanism becomes very strong, we cannot achieve fairness. Yes, sir.
Yes.
And you're the last, please.
Asante sana. Thank you so much, Dr. Waluria Gerald.
Yes, sir.
I have 2 points. Number one is a request. We might need to be availed with some of the presentations that have been put through today. So to the organizers, I think it can be a point to ponder upon. Then about the advertisement bit, I wonder how some spaces handled, some spaces that would be one, public spaces, say, for example, taxi parks, and then some airports. Of recent, we have seen some posters of some candidates in some of those areas, and it would appear as an advertisement in a way. I don't know, how are those spaces handled? It might not be directly media, but that is also a public kind of space that is supposed to be consumed by every person equally. Asante.
I think those are very big concerns. I know that there are candidates who might advertise in certain spaces but not others. But again, the question remains that all candidates should be fairly treated. If you allow posters of one candidate, you should also allow posters of other candidates. If you are not willing to allow posters of others, you should not also put posters of that specific candidate. So it is still a very big question of enforcement, because there seems to be no one willing to stand up against any violations, especially committed by the NRM. They can put posters and deface posters of opponents, sometimes without any repercussions. So that remains a challenge, and even as we talk about media, we are waiting to see whether UCC this time might punish any, because it takes one action. If they can punish one particular media house for not doing the right thing, especially if they have done a favor for the incumbent party but not the opposition, maybe others can learn from it. but we are still waiting to see.
But will that happen?
Yeah. I think I had closed the questions.
Okay, the last one from Mr. Kaija.
2016, yes. Yes, I think we discussed this case a little earlier before when you had stepped out. But even before we get to the level of court, we want to see that candidates can receive justice without necessarily going to court, because you remember that the court process alone took 4 to 6 years to be decided. And even after awarding a fine of 80 million shillings, up to today, I'm not sure whether he has ever received that money. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gerard. A big round of applause. Sometimes, somewhere where I go, when we are giving an applause to someone, we say, Asante sana. Yongeza tena. Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Gerard, for such a wonderful presentation. And also thank you all the presenters that have been here with us, but also to us who have been here the whole day, the entire day, from 8 a.m. up to now. Thank you so much for really giving us this commitment and giving us audience. But also, this concludes our day 1 of the training, but we expect you to come back tomorrow for day 2. So, a few things to do before we really end. We have like 2 items. 1, we shall have a group picture. I think we will use this front part. We'll have some banners and yeah. But also, maybe people who are responsible for different banners, you can be organizing them or putting them where you want them to be. Yes. And secondly, I would like to pass some information. So, our dear participants, we expect to see you tomorrow, of course, for the last day or day 2 of the training. And the day 2 training, it's when we will have our transport facilitation. Yeah, so tomorrow, let's try to keep time. Start a little bit early. I don't know what that means. But okay, and please thank you for accepting. So, yeah, someone